Millionaire hides his fortune to woo a beautiful black air hostess. Her reaction shocks him. Welcome, dear viewers, both new and old, to another breathtaking love story on Alcout Stories. May your heart be filled with warmth, your soul with joy, and your life with endless love. May every dream you chase bring you closer to happiness, and may you always find light, even in the darkest moments. Tonight's story is not just about love, it's about sacrifice, trust, and a test that could break even the strongest hearts. Imagine falling deeply in love with someone who seems perfect, only to discover they've been hiding a life-changing secret. Would you forgive them? Or would you walk away, even if your heart was breaking? Stay with me as we dive into this roller coaster of emotions, where love fights against doubt, and a billionaire gives up everything, not for wealth, but for the woman who captured his heart. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching me from? Drop your location in the comments. I'd love to know. James Anderson sat in his first-class seat, gazing absently out of the airplane window as the engines roared to life. At 32, he had everything a man could desire: immense wealth, power, and a reputation that made headlines. Women chased him for his fortune, but their affections always felt superficial. Beneath his polished suits and striking features, medium-long dark hair framing a face sculpted with a strong jawline and piercing blue eyes, James craved something real, something untainted by money. As the plane soared into the sky, he sighed, preparing himself for yet another business trip. But fate had other plans. When he turned his head, his gaze locked onto her. Amara Carter. She was unlike any woman he had ever seen. Her smooth brown skin glowed under the soft cabin lights, and her deep, soulful eyes carried a warmth that made his heart skip a beat. Her radiant smile was like the first morning light, bright and full of light. Clad in her airline uniform, she moved with effortless grace, tending to passengers with a kindness that didn't feel forced. It was genuine, natural, beautiful. James straightened, his usual confidence faltering. Who was she? Why did a simple glance from her feel like an electric current running through his veins? "Sir, would you like anything to drink?" Her voice was like honey, smooth and sweet. James swallowed, suddenly uncharacteristically nervous. "A coffee, please." Black. As she poured the steaming liquid into his cup, their fingers brushed, just a fleeting touch. But it was enough to make James feel something he hadn't felt in years. He watched her, captivated, as she moved to the next passenger, her smile never wavering. The rest of the flight became a blur. James found himself stealing glances at Amara every chance he got, mesmerized by the way she handled every passenger with patience and grace. She wasn't just beautiful, she had a spirit that shined brighter than any diamond he owned. James had met countless women, models, actresses, socialites, but none had ever made his heart race the way Amara did. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was breathtaking. It was the way she carried herself, the way her kindness wasn't just a part of her job, but a part of her soul. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, she was just being herself. He noticed the way she stopped to help an elderly passenger struggling to reach his bag, the way she bent slightly and reassured a nervous child flying for the first time, the way she took a deep breath and smiled even when a rude businessman rudely snapped at her over his drink order. James had seen plenty of people who were polite out of necessity, but Amara was different. She was real. By the time the plane began its descent, James had made up his mind. He wanted to know her. He wanted her to see him, not as James Anderson, the billionaire, but as a man, a simple man. But how? As the passengers began to disembark, James stayed behind, pretending to fumble with his bag just to get one last glimpse of her. She turned, her eyes meeting his again, and for a moment he swore she felt it too, the undeniable pull between them. "Have a great day, sir," she said politely, her smile unwavering. James hesitated, then finally spoke. "Thank you, Amara. Right?" She looked surprised but nodded. "Yes." He smiled, committing her name to memory. "You have a beautiful smile." Amara's cheeks warmed slightly, but she remained professional. "Thank you, sir. Safe travels." James stepped off the plane, but his mind was spinning. This wasn't just some fleeting attraction. It was something deeper, something he couldn't ignore. That night in his lavish penthouse suite, James lay awake staring at the ceiling. He could have easily found out everything about Amara with a single phone call. He had the power, the influence, but that wasn't what he wanted. He wanted her to fall for him, not his money. Then an idea struck him, one so daring, so unconventional, but the only way he could truly find out if her heart was real. He would hide his identity. He would become someone else, not a billionaire, not a CEO, a simple tea-boy at the airport. James chuckled to himself at the absurdity of the idea, but as the thought settled, it made more and more sense. He had spent his entire life being surrounded by people who only cared about his wealth. What if, for once, he could experience love without the burden of his name and fortune? The next morning, instead of heading to his usual high-rise office, he made his way to the airport staff recruitment office. With a forged identity and a fake resume, he applied for a job as a tea server in one of the airport's staff lounges. It was a role no one would ever suspect a billionaire to take. Within a week, he was hired. Dressed in a simple uniform, James Anderson, the powerful billionaire, became James the tea boy. As he walked into the employee lounge on his first day, balancing a tray of steaming cups, his heart pounded in anticipation. He was about to see Amara again, and this time, she wouldn't know who he really was. James Anderson had never done anything like this before. He had spent his entire life in luxury, surrounded by wealth, power and influence. But now, standing behind a small tea stall at the bustling airport, dressed in a simple uniform, with an apron tied around his waist, he felt an odd mix of excitement and nervousness. This was the start of something new, something that wasn't dictated by his wealth. His once polished hands were now rough from handling tea kettles and cups. Instead of high-end cologne, he smelled of freshly brewed tea. His usual world of billion-dollar deals and boardroom meetings was replaced by the clatter of cups and the murmur of travelers hurrying to their flights. It was an entirely different life, and for the first time in years, James felt free. Then, Amara Carter walked towards the tea stall, her uniform crisp and professional, her presence commanding yet graceful. She had no idea she had captivated the heart of the man standing behind the counter. She was the reason he was here. He had seen her on that flight, serving passengers with kindness and a warm smile that reached her soulful dark eyes. That moment had changed everything for him. "One masala tea, please," she said, her voice carrying a melodic lilt that made his heart race. James, now going by the name Jay, forced himself to stay calm as he prepared her order. He could feel his pulse quicken when she looked at him, her eyes briefly scanning his features as if trying to place where she had seen him before. He wondered if she would recognize him from the flight, but she didn't seem to. "Here you go," he said, handing her the cup with a small smile. She took a sip and let out a satisfied sigh. "Wow, this is really good. I might start coming here every day." His heart soared at the thought. "Then I'll make sure it's always perfect for you," he replied, watching as a faint smile touched her lips. Days turned into weeks, and Amara indeed became a regular customer at the tea stall. Each morning, she would stop by, and their conversations grew longer. They talked about everything: her childhood, her dreams, her love for traveling. James listened intently, absorbing every detail, every word, every moment he could share with her. He had met countless women in his life, but none had ever intrigued him the way she did. One morning, as Amara stirred her tea, she tilted her head and asked, "So, Jay, how long have you been working here?" James hesitated. He had prepared for questions like this, but hadn't expected them so soon. "Not long," he admitted. "I wanted a change, something simple, away from the chaos." She nodded thoughtfully. "I get that. Simplicity has its own beauty." Her words struck him deeply. If only she knew just how different his real world was. But he wasn't ready to reveal the truth. Not yet. He wanted her to see him as Jay, the T-boy, not James Anderson, the billionaire. One afternoon, as James was wiping down the counter, he overheard Amara talking to her friend. "He's sweet," she was saying, glancing at him from a distance. "Different from the guys I usually meet. He's not trying to impress me with money or status." It's refreshing. James had to bite back a smile. It was working. She was seeing him for who he truly was, not for his wealth, but for his heart. Their friendship continued to grow, and with each passing day, James fell deeper in love. He cherished the moments they shared, from the way she laughed at his silly jokes, to the way she thoughtfully listened to his words. He had never felt so alive. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amara lingered at the tea stall longer than usual. The airport was quieter at this hour, and for once there were no interruptions. "You know," she said softly, looking up at him, "I never thought I'd enjoy coming to an airport early just to have tea and talk to someone."
James chuckled. "And I never thought making tea could bring me so much happiness." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the world around them faded. There was something undeniable growing between them. James knew he had never felt anything this real before. But even as he basked in the joy of their connection, a nagging thought lingered at the back of his mind. How long could he keep up the disguise before the truth came crashing down? One evening after Amara's shift, James invited her for a walk outside the airport. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of freshly fallen rain from earlier in the day. The runway lights flickered in the distance, and the gentle hum of aircraft engines filled the background. James felt a nervous excitement bubbling inside him. Tonight felt different, special. As they walked along the quiet pathway, a light drizzle began to fall. Amara laughed as she tilted her head upward, letting the raindrops kiss her face. "Looks like we're about to get soaked," she said playfully. James grinned. "Then let's make the most of it." Within moments the drizzle turned into a downpour. Instead of seeking shelter, they stayed, laughing under the rain. Their hands brushed against each other's, sending tingles up James's spine. Amara's damp curls clung to her face, making her look even more breathtaking. James took off his jacket and gently wrapped it around her shoulders, his fingers lingering as he adjusted it. Amara shivered, but not from the cold. There was something in the way James looked at her, tender, intense, as if she was the only woman in the world. "You know," she whispered, hugging the jacket around her, "I never thought a T-boy could make me feel this happy." James's heart clenched. He had never cared about a woman's opinion of his status before, but hearing Amara's words, knowing she liked him as a simple T-boy, made his hidden truth feel even heavier. A gust of wind sent a shiver through Amara. James instinctively pulled her closer, their bodies just inches apart. "You're freezing," he murmured. "I don't mind," she replied, her dark eyes locking onto his. For a moment the world around them faded. The rain, the airport, the distant noise, it all disappeared. It was just them. The unspoken attraction between them intensified, and James had the sudden reckless urge to kiss her. But he hesitated. He wanted her heart, not just a fleeting moment. Instead, he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Let's get out of the rain," he said softly. As they ran toward a small covered cafe nearby, laughing like children, James knew he was in trouble. He was falling in love, and soon he would have to face the consequences of the secret he was keeping. They entered the cafe, their clothes damp and their skin glistening with raindrops. The warm aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, creating an inviting atmosphere. James pulled out a chair for Amara, watching as she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at him, and he knew he would do anything to keep that look on her face. The waiter approached, and James ordered 2 hot chocolates. Amara arched an eyebrow. "No tea? That's surprising coming from a T-boy." James chuckled. "Even T-boys like a change sometimes." She laughed, shaking her head.
You're different, Jay. Most men I've met are either arrogant or too predictable. But you have a mystery about you. James swallowed hard. If only she knew how right she was. The conversation flowed effortlessly, with them exchanging childhood stories, dreams and even embarrassing moments. James found himself captivated by her every word. Amara, with her kind heart and independent spirit, was unlike anyone he had ever met. I always wanted to travel the world, she confessed, stirring her hot chocolate. That's why I became a flight attendant. Every country, every city has a story, and I want to experience them all. James smiled. And have you found your favorite place yet? She thought for a moment before meeting his gaze. Not yet, but I have a feeling it's not a place, it's a person. James's heart pounded in his chest. Was she talking about him? Could she feel the same pull that he did? The rain outside continued to fall, drumming softly against the cafe windows. Time slipped by unnoticed, but neither of them cared. They were lost in their own little world, a world where status, wealth, and secrets didn't exist. As the cafe neared closing time, James reluctantly stood. I should walk you home. Amara hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that. The walk back to her apartment was quiet, filled with unspoken words and stolen glances. When they reached her doorstep, she turned to him with a soft smile. Thank you for tonight, Jay. It was perfect. James inhaled deeply, struggling to hold back the urge to pull her into his arms. Good night, Amara. Good night, she whispered, before disappearing inside. James stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door. His heart was full, yet a part of him ached. He was falling deeper than he had ever expected. And sooner or later, he would have to tell her the truth. But not yet. Not tonight. Tonight, he just wanted to hold on to the illusion that he was simply Jay, the T-boy who had stolen her heart in the rain. The days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, James and Amara found themselves drawn closer together. What had started as casual conversations over cups of tea at the airport slowly blossomed into something deeper, something neither of them could deny. James, still hiding his true identity as a billionaire, found himself relishing the simplicity of their time together. He had never known love without the weight of wealth attached to it. Every woman he had dated before had been fascinated by his fortune, but Amara, she was different. She cared for the little things. His smile, his words, his presence. And James, for the first time in his life, felt truly seen. One evening, James surprised Amara with an unusual date. Instead of an expensive restaurant or a lavish event, he took her to a quiet rooftop, overlooking the airport. The sky stretched endlessly above them, a blanket of stars twinkling in the deep blue night. This is beautiful, Amara breathed, looking up in awe. James, standing beside her, watched her instead. Not as beautiful as you. She turned to face him, her dark eyes reflecting the city lights. There was a pause, a heartbeat where the world seemed to hold its breath. Then she laughed softly, nudging his arm playfully. You really know how to charm a girl, Jay. He smiled, but deep inside guilt gnawed at him. He wasn't Jay, the humble T-boy. He was James Anderson, the billionaire, and the longer he kept the truth from her, the harder it would be when she eventually found out. But for now, he let himself enjoy the moment. A love that needed no luxury. Their dates continued, and each one was a testament to the kind of love James had always dreamed of, simple, pure, and untouched by materialism. They ate street food together, laughing as they tried spicy dishes that made their eyes water. They walked along the beach, feeling the cool sand beneath their feet, talking about their dreams and childhood memories. One night, as they strolled under the moonlight, Amara turned to him with a thoughtful expression. Jay, what's your biggest dream? James hesitated. He couldn't tell her the truth, that he already had everything a man could wish for, except real love. Instead, he said, to be happy with the right person. Her eyes softened. That's a beautiful dream. He reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. And you? She smiled wistfully. To love someone who loves me. just as much. Someone who sees me for who I am, not for what I have or don't have. James's heart clenched. She was describing exactly what he wanted, what they already had. But would she still feel the same once she knew the truth? The depth of her love. One evening, after her shift, James surprised her with a little handwritten note tucked inside a bouquet of white lilies. For the most beautiful woman I know, you brighten my world more than the stars ever could. Amara pressed the note to her heart, tears glistening in her eyes. No one's ever made me feel this special before. James gently tucked a stray curl behind her ear. You deserve to feel special every single day. She stood on her toes, pressing a soft kiss to his cheek. His heart pounded in his chest. He had never felt this kind of love before. Innocent yet intense. Deep yet so effortless. A growing fear. But with love came fear. Fear of the moment she would find out the truth. Fear of losing. Every time she told him how much she adored his humility, his honesty, his simplicity, it was like a dagger to his heart. Would she ever forgive him for deceiving her? One night as they sat side by side on a park bench, Amara leaned her head on his shoulder and sighed. I feel like I can be myself with you. You're not like other men. You're real. You're kind. And she hesitated before whispering, I think I'm falling for you. James swallowed hard, his heart thudding loudly in his chest. He wanted to say it back. He wanted to tell her that he was falling for her too. Had already fallen, in fact. But his lies held him back. Instead, he kissed the top of her head, tightening his arm around her. I'll always cherish you, Amara. And he meant every word, even if she didn't yet know the full truth. But secrets have a way of coming to light. And James knew that the time would come when he'd have to reveal his true identity. The question that haunted him was, when that moment arrived, would she still love him? Or would he lose her for her? Sky was painted in hues of orange and pink as the sun dipped below the horizon. The gentle waves crashed against the shore, their rhythmic melody blending seamlessly with the soft rustle of the evening breeze. The setting was nothing short of magical. A private beachside dinner, where flickering candlelight reflected in Amara's mesmerizing dark eyes. The scent of salt and fresh flowers filled the air as James led her to a beautifully set table under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights. James had spent weeks planning this night, ensuring every detail was perfect. He had never felt so nervous before, not in billion-dollar boardroom meetings or during high-stakes negotiations. Tonight was different. Tonight he would bare his soul to the woman he loved. As they sat down, Amara's laughter danced in the air, making his heart swell. She was breathtaking in her flowing blue dress, her rich brown skin glowing under the candlelight. She reached across the table, intertwining her fingers with his. You've really outdone yourself tonight, Jay, she said, her voice filled with warmth. He smiled, his heart pounding. You deserve nothing but the best. Dinner was filled with light-hearted conversations and stolen glances. Every time Amara laughed, James found himself falling deeper. As the meal ended, he stood, taking a deep breath before pulling her up gently. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, he said, guiding her toward the shoreline. The waves kissed their feet as he turned to face her. Amara looked up at him, curiosity shining in her eyes. Jay, what is... James reached into his pocket, his fingers trembling slightly, as he pulled out a small velvet box. Dropping to one knee, he gazed up at her, his piercing blue eyes filled with love. Amara, you are my world. I never knew true happiness until I met you. Your kindness, your strength, your love, they mean everything to me. I don't want to spend another day without you by my side. Will you marry me? Amara gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded frantically. Yes, Jay. 1,000,000 times yes. James felt his heart soar as he slipped the ring onto her finger. He stood, pulling her into a deep embrace. The moment was perfect, filled with love and raw emotion. But perfection shattered in an instant. James took a deep breath, his hands tightening around hers. Amara, there's something I need to tell you first.
She frowned slightly, tilting her head. "What is it?" His pulse thundered in his ears. "My real name isn't Jay. It's James Anderson." Confusion flickered in her eyes before realization dawned. Her smile faltered. "James Anderson, as in the billionaire?" He nodded, searching her face for understanding. "Yes. I didn't mean to deceive you, Amara. You lied to me." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of her heartbreak. "I never wanted my wealth to define our love," he pleaded, his hands tightening around hers. "I needed to know you loved me, for who I am, not for my fortune." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she took a step back, shaking her head. "But you weren't honest with me. I trusted you, Jay. Or should I say, James? I loved you as the humble, kind man who made me laugh, who made me feel special. But now, I don't even know who you are. Amara, please." She held up her hand, silencing him. "I don't belong in your world, James. You're a billionaire, and I'm just me. I don't fit into your life, your status. I can't do this." She pulled the ring off her finger and pressed it into his palm. With one last tearful glance, she turned and walked away, her footsteps disappearing into the sand. James stood frozen, the ring burning in his hand as his world crumbled around him. Reverend James had never experienced such profound emptiness. The days following Amara's departure felt like an endless void, a torment he had never known. His vast mansion, once a symbol of his success, now felt like a cold, lifeless prison. The luxury that had once been his pride now seemed meaningless without her presence. He had built an empire, yet the one thing he truly wanted was slipping away, and he felt powerless to stop it. Every night he lay awake, replaying their moments together, the way she laughed when he joked, the sparkle in her eyes when she spoke about her dreams, the way she held his hand under the moonlight. But the memory that haunted him most was the pain in her eyes when she realized he had lied. He had shattered her trust, and in doing so, he had shattered his own heart. He tried calling her, but she never answered. He sent her messages, but they remained unread. He even went to the airport, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, but she avoided him completely. The realization hit him hard. He had lost her, and the weight of it crushed him. But James was not a man who accepted defeat easily. He had spent years fighting to build his fortune, proving himself against all odds. Now he would fight for love. One evening, as he sat alone in his study, staring at the engagement ring she had returned, a thought struck him. If wealth was the reason she walked away, then wealth would no longer be a part of his life. What was the point of billions if they couldn't buy the one thing he truly needed? He picked up his phone and called his legal team. "Prepare a press release," he instructed. "I want to donate my entire wealth and company shares to charity." Silence followed on the other end of the call. "Sir, did you say entire wealth?" His lawyer stammered. "Yes, everything. I want it done by tomorrow." His lawyer tried to argue, tried to reason with him, but James was firm. "I've made my decision. Make it happen." The next morning, James held a press conference in front of a crowd of journalists. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust toward him, but he stood tall, his piercing blue eyes filled with unwavering determination. "I have spent years accumulating wealth, believing it was the key to happiness. But today, I realize that love, trust, and kindness are far more valuable than any fortune. Effective immediately, I am donating my entire wealth and all my company shares to a charity for homeless women." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scrambled to confirm what they had just heard. The news spread like wildfire. Billionaire James Anderson gives up fortune for love. From riches to rags. CEO donates everything. Social media exploded with reactions. Some called him foolish. Others called him a hopeless romantic. But one person's reaction mattered more than anyone else's. Amara's. James didn't know if she had seen the news. He didn't know if she would care. But he had done it for her. He had done it for love. And now, all he could do was wait, hoping that somehow, some way, she would come back to him. That evening, James walked through the streets of the city, feeling lighter than he had in years. He was no longer a billionaire,
No longer the powerful CEO. He was just a man in love, waiting for the woman who held his heart.
He glanced up at the sky and whispered, "Amara, I love you, and I'll wait for you, no matter how long it takes." Little did he know, Amara had already seen the headlines. And as she read them, tears filled her eyes, her heart pounded in her chest. Could she have been wrong? Could love be more important than wealth? And more importantly, could she still have a future with the man who had just sacrificed everything for her? The moment Amara saw the breaking news, her breath caught in her throat. The television screen displayed flashing headlines. "Billionaire James Anderson gives up fortune for love." She stared at the screen in disbelief, her hands trembling. Every channel, every social media platform, every news outlet was flooded with the same story. James Anderson, the young billionaire, had renounced his entire empire, donating his wealth and shares to a charity supporting homeless women. The image of him standing before the press, solemn yet unwavering, replayed over and over. Her heart pounded as she read his statement. "If my wealth is a barrier to love, I do not need it. Love is the only treasure I seek." Tears welled in her eyes. The man she had walked away from wasn't just another arrogant billionaire playing games. He had proven his love in the most extraordinary way possible. "He did this for me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He gave up everything for me." A whirlwind of emotions crashed into her: guilt, disbelief, love, and an overwhelming realization. How could she have doubted him? Had she let her fears destroy something so pure? Without wasting another second, Amara grabbed her coat and ran out the door. The city lights blurred past as she sped through the streets, her heart pounding with urgency. She had to see him. She had to tell him the truth. When she arrived at James's mansion, it was eerily quiet. No guards, no extravagant cars in the driveway, no sign of the lavish lifestyle he once led. The grandeur of the estate still stood, but something felt different, as if the soul of the place had left with its wealth. She stepped hesitantly toward the door and knocked. Silence. After a few seconds, she tried again, this time calling out, "James?" "It's me, Amara. Please, please open the door." A long pause, then the door creaked open. James stood there, looking nothing like the billionaire the world had known. He wore a simple white t-shirt and jeans, his usually polished hair tousled, dark circles shadowing his striking blue eyes. He had lost weight, his face etched with the pain of heartbreak. "Amara," his voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken in days. Seeing him like this shattered her. He wasn't the proud billionaire anymore. He was just a man who had given up everything for love. "You really gave everything away for me," she choked out, her voice trembling. James leaned against the doorframe, sighing deeply. "I never needed the wealth, Amara. I never needed the company, the jets, the mansions. The only thing that mattered to me was you, and I lost you because of who I was." His words pierced through her like a dagger. She took a shaky step forward, fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. "James, I was scared. I thought I didn't belong in your world. I thought I would never be enough for a billionaire. But now, I see, I was wrong. It was never about status for you, was it?" He looked into her eyes, raw emotion flashing through his gaze. "Never. I only wanted you to love me for me, and when I saw that my wealth was standing between us, I realized I didn't need it at all. My happiness was never in my billions. It was in your love." Amara let out a soft sob, her heart aching with the weight of all the pain they had endured. "I love you, Jay. The real you. Not the millionaire, not the powerful businessman, just the man who stole my heart." James inhaled sharply, as if those words were the air he had been starving for. He reached out, brushing a stray tear from her cheek. "Are you saying you still want me?" She nodded, her lips trembling. "I never stopped. And now, I know the truth. You are the only thing I need." Without another word, he pulled her into his arms, holding her as if he would never let go. Amara melted into his embrace, feeling his warmth, his love, his pain, the weight of their past mistakes, and misunderstandings dissolved in that single moment. As the cool night air wrapped around them, James pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "You have no idea how much I missed you." Amara smiled through her tears. "Then don't ever let me go again." He cupped her face, his blue eyes shining with love. "Never." And as they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, it was clear that their love had survived the storm, and would only grow stronger from here. The sun cast a golden glow over the quaint garden, where James and Amara's wedding was set to take place. Unlike the extravagant weddings of billionaires, this one was simple yet filled with an undeniable warmth. White roses lined the aisle, and fairy lights twinkled above, creating a magical ambiance that didn't come from wealth, but from love itself. Amara stood before the mirror, dressed in an elegant yet simple ivory gown. Her dark curls cascaded down her shoulders, and her soulful brown eyes glistened with emotions. As she adjusted her veil, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she and James had come. The man she had once believed was a humble tea boy was now standing at the altar waiting for her, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had given up everything for love. Her best friend, Layla, squeezed her hand. "Are you ready?" Amara took a deep breath and nodded. More than ever. As she walked down the aisle, her heart pounded in her chest. James stood at the altar, dressed in a crisp white shirt and a simple black suit. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, filled with nothing but love and devotion. He had given up his fortune, his empire, yet he stood before her with more richness in his heart than ever before. When she finally reached him, James took her hands gently. "I once thought I lost you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But love brought us back together." A tear slipped down Amara's cheek as she whispered, "I love you, James, not because of what you have, but because of who you are." The officiant began the ceremony, and as they exchanged vows, every word was spoken with heartfelt sincerity. "I promise to cherish and love you through every storm and every sunshine," James vowed, squeezing her hands gently. "I once lived in a world of riches, but I never felt truly wealthy until I met you." Amara's voice trembled as she responded, "I promise to stand by you, not for what you can give me, but for the love you've already given me. You are my home, my heart, my forever." With those words, they sealed their vows with a kiss, and the crowd erupted in cheers. There were no luxury cars, no celebrities, no million-dollar decorations, just pure love, laughter, and heartfelt joy. As the evening continued, they danced under the twinkling fairy lights, lost in each other's arms. James spun Amara around, pulling her close. "Are you happy, Mrs. Anderson?" She gazed into his eyes and smiled. "Happier than I ever imagined." In that moment, James realized that he had never truly been a billionaire. Not when he owned jets or penthouses, but now, with Amara by his side, he was the richest man in the world. Their love story was never about wealth or power. It was about finding a love that was priceless. James wanted their honeymoon to be nothing short of magical. Instead of an extravagant trip to a five-star resort, he planned something far more intimate, a secluded cabin in the heart of the mountains, where only nature and their love surrounded them. It was the perfect place for them to celebrate their new beginning, without the distractions of wealth or the outside world. As the sun began to set, the crisp mountain air carried the scent of pine, and the sky transformed into a masterpiece of pinks, purples, and deep oranges. Amara stood by the wooden balcony, taking in the breathtaking view. The wind teased her curly hair, and she wrapped her arms around herself. James came up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist, pulling her against his warmth. "It's beautiful here," she whispered, leaning her head against his chest. "Not as beautiful as you," James murmured, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "I wanted us to be somewhere where nothing else mattered but us. No wealth, no expectations, just love." Amara turned in his arms, looking up into his striking blue eyes. "You didn't have to do all this, James. Just being with you is enough." He cupped her face gently. "You deserve the world, Amara, and I want to give it to you, not through money, but through love." A gentle breeze swept around them, sending a shiver down Amara's spine. James noticed instantly and took off his jacket, draping it over her shoulders. "Let's go inside," he suggested, his voice laced with tenderness. Inside the cozy cabin, a warm fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The scent of cinnamon and fresh pine filled the air. James had prepared a romantic candlelit dinner, a simple yet intimate setup with soft music playing in the background. Amara's eyes widened with surprise. "You did all this?" she asked, her heart swelling with love. He pulled out a chair for her. "Every detail, for you." As they ate, their hands brushed occasionally, sending shivers through both of them. Their conversation was filled with laughter, stolen glances, and deep confessions. The love between them was raw and undeniable. After dinner, they curled up by the fireplace, wrapped in a soft blanket. James played with Amara's fingers, tracing invisible patterns on her skin. "Do you remember the first time we met?" he asked, a nostalgic smile on his lips. She chuckled. "Of course. You were pretending to be a T-boy, and I had no idea I was falling in love with a billionaire. I fell for you the moment our eyes met on that plane," he admitted. "I knew you were different." Amara looked at him with deep emotion. "And I fell for Jay, the humble, kind man who made me laugh and listened to me like no one ever had." James leaned closer, brushing his lips against her forehead. "Then let's forget the past titles and just be us. James and Amara, two souls in love." The fire cast flickering golden hues across their faces as James gently tilted Amara's chin up. Their lips met in a slow, tender kiss, filled with love and unspoken promise. He held her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, his fingers tangling in her curls, his touch gentle yet possessive. Amara sighed into the kiss, feeling the depth of his love. Her hands rested on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, knowing it beat for her. As the night deepened, they stayed wrapped in each other's arms, whispering sweet words and sharing soft, lingering kisses. Outside, the wind howled softly through the trees, but inside, the warmth of their love kept them safe. They spent the night talking, laughing, and holding each other, cherishing the moments that were theirs alone. As dawn approached, Amara rested her head on James's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I love you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. James kissed the top of her head. "And I will love you for the rest of my life." Their honeymoon was not about luxury or grand gestures. It was about them, their love, and the quiet, beautiful moments that made their hearts whole. And in that secluded cabin, under the blanket of stars, their love story continued to bloom, stronger and deeper than ever before. James and Amara stepped into their new life hand in hand, ready to face the world without the weight of wealth, but with the strength of their love. Despite no longer being a billionaire, James had never felt richer. He and Amara decided to start fresh, pouring their passion into something meaningful. After much thought, they used their remaining savings to open a small, cozy cafe in a quiet part of town. The day the cafe opened, James looked around at the simple yet charming space they had built together. The warm scent of fresh coffee and homemade pastries filled the air. Amara stood behind the counter, her radiant smile welcoming customers. She had always loved the idea of creating a space where people could come, relax and feel at home. And now, with James by her side, her dream had come true. James, once used to commanding boardrooms and making billion-dollar deals, found a new sense of fulfillment in brewing coffee and serving customers. The joy on a patron's face when they took their first sip of the special caramel macchiato Amara had perfected, made his heart swell with pride. One evening, as they cleaned up after closing, Amara leaned against the counter watching James mop the floor. She giggled. "Never thought I'd see the day when James Anderson, the billionaire, would be mopping floors." James grinned and playfully splashed a bit of water in her direction. "And I never thought I'd find more happiness in a cafe than in a boardroom. But here we are." They shared a laugh, the sound of it echoing in their little cafe, filling the space with warmth. Life was simpler now, but it was full of genuine happiness. They no longer had luxury cars or extravagant mansions, but they had each other,
and that was enough. Their cafe slowly became a beloved local spot. Regular customers began to come not just for the coffee, but for the couple's love story, which had spread through the town. The man who gave up $1 billion empire for love, they called James, and he wore the title with pride. One day, an elderly woman entered the cafe and watched James and Amara work together seamlessly. She smiled and said, "You two remind me of my late husband and me. We built a life together with nothing but love, and that love lasted a lifetime. Money comes and goes, but true love is rare. Hold on to it." Amara reached for James's hand and squeezed it gently. "We plan to," she said softly, looking into his deep blue eyes. James kissed her forehead every single day. Though they had traded luxury for a simpler life, they had found something far greater: peace, fulfillment, and a love that no amount of money could ever buy. And as they stood together in the quiet of their cafe, watching the sun set through the window, they knew they had everything they would ever need. James and Amara had built a peaceful, fulfilling life together, far removed from the extravagant world he once ruled. Their small cafe had become a beloved spot in the neighborhood, where people came not just for coffee, but for warmth, laughter, and the inspiring story of the couple who chose love or wealth. Every morning they opened the cafe together, greeting customers with genuine smiles, their love shining through in every small interaction. Life was simple, but it was beautiful. One afternoon, as James wiped down a table, the little bell above the cafe door jingled, signaling a new customer. When he looked up, his heart nearly stopped. Standing before him was Richard Caldwell, his former business partner, a man who once shared boardrooms and billion-dollar deals with him. "James Anderson," Richard said, smirking as he took off his expensive sunglasses. "I never thought I'd find you running a cafe." James forced a polite smile, but he knew Richard well enough to sense that this was more than a casual visit. "What brings you here, Richard?" James asked, keeping his tone even. Richard leaned against the counter, his sharp eyes scanning the cafe. "I'll get straight to the point. We're launching a new business venture, one that could change the industry, and I want you back, James. You were always the best at what you did."
James felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, nostalgia, and an unsettling sense of temptation. There was a time when such an offer would have been irresistible, but now his life was different. He was different. Before he could respond, Amara walked out from the kitchen, carrying a tray of freshly baked pastries. She stopped mid-step, noticing the tension between the two men. "Amara, this is Richard, an old colleague," James introduced, struggling to find the right word. Richard smiled at her. "And you must be the woman who stole James away from the empire he built." Amara stiffened at his words, but she kept her composure. "James made his own choices," she said firmly, placing the tray down, "and I support them." Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "Look, James, you don't have to live like this. You don't have to serve coffee and wash dishes when you could be back where you belong. I'm offering you a fresh start, a position as co-CEO, with shares that will make you richer than ever before." James felt Amara's gaze on him, filled with silent questions. This was the life he had walked away from. Could he really step back into it, without losing everything he had gained with Amara? "I don't need riches, Richard," James finally said. "I have everything I want right here." Richard scoffed. "Come on, James. Are you telling me you're happy struggling to make ends meet? You used to be a king, and now you're just a cafe owner." James looked around. The cozy cafe, the smell of fresh coffee, the sound of Amara chatting with customers. He thought of their nights spent curled up on their tiny couch, laughing over silly jokes, and the quiet moments when he held her close, knowing he had made the right choice. "I don't see it as a struggle," James said, meeting Richard's gaze. "I see it as a life I built with love, and I wouldn't trade it for anything." Richard exhaled sharply, clearly frustrated. "At least think about it. You have my number." He pulled out a sleek business card and placed it on the counter before turning toward the door. As the bell jingled once more, James let out a deep breath. He turned to Amara, who was watching him closely. "You okay?" she asked gently. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I am, because I already made my decision the day I chose you." Amara smiled, wrapping her arms around him. "And I'd choose you over a billionaire 100 times over." James kissed her forehead, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. Richard's offer had reminded him of the life he once lived, but it also reaffirmed the life he had chosen. And he wouldn't change a thing. The morning light filtered through the small cafe window as Amara arranged fresh flowers on the tables, her heart heavy with thoughts of James's decision. He had been offered a prestigious position in a new venture, an opportunity to reclaim the wealth and power he had once abandoned. She should have been happy for him. But deep inside, an old fear clawed at her heart. Would success change him? Would their simple, love-filled life be threatened by the temptations of wealth? James, sensing her unease, approached her as she wiped the countertop. "You're quiet today," he noted, gently tucking a stray curl behind her ear. "Talk to me, love." She hesitated, before finally meeting his gaze. "Are you considering it?" she asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's a great opportunity. I won't lie, the thought of building something again excites me, but I don't want it if it means losing us." Amara looked away, gripping the edge of the counter. "That's what I'm afraid of, James. I fell in love with you, not the billionaire, not the CEO, just you. What if success changes things?" James cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "Do you think I'd ever let anything come between us again?" His voice was filled with conviction. "I gave up my fortune once, because I knew what truly mattered. And it's you, Amara. Always you." Tears welled in her eyes, but doubt still lingered. "Then why do I feel like we're at a crossroads again?" That evening, James took Amara to the beach where he had first proposed. The waves whispered against the shore, mirroring the turmoil in their heart. He held her hands tightly as they sat on the cool sand, gazing at the endless ocean. "Amara," he said softly, "tell me what you need. If you want me to stay here with you in this cafe, I will. If you're afraid, tell me, but don't shut me out." She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath before finally speaking. "I don't want to be afraid, James. I want to trust that no matter what happens, we'll always choose each other." He kissed her forehead, then whispered against her skin. "Then let's promise each other, no matter where life takes us, no matter how much money we have or don't have, we will always come home to each other." A single tear escaped down Amara's cheek as she nodded. "Promise me, Jay." He pressed his forehead against hers. "I promise." For the first time in days, Amara's heart felt lighter. Love wasn't just about grand sacrifices or dramatic choices. It was about choosing each other every single day, no matter the challenges. As the waves continued their rhythmic dance, James and Amara sealed their promise with a kiss, knowing that their love had been tested once again, and it had prevailed. James had always been a man of action, and this time, he wanted to show Amara just how deep his love ran. He knew she had been hesitant ever since his business partner's offer, fearing that stepping back into the corporate world would change him again. He couldn't let her doubt for even a second. He needed to prove that his heart belonged to her, no matter. One evening, James handed Amara a note when she walked into their cafe after running some errands. The envelope was sealed with wax, his initials imprinted on it. "What's this?" she asked, tilting her head. "Just read it," he said with a soft smile. She carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the paper inside. "Meet me at the place where I first knew I loved you." Her heart skipped a beat. She immediately knew where to go. The surprise under the stars. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Amara arrived at the rooftop where they had once shared street food and stargazed together. But tonight the rooftop looked entirely different. Twinkling fairy lights adorned the railing, casting a warm glow, while soft music played in the background. A pathway of red, rose petals led her to the center of the rooftop where James stood, dressed in a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, waiting for her. Amara gasped as she took in the sight. "You did all this?" she whispered,
her voice trembling. James nodded, stepping forward. Do you remember this place? This was where I first realized I was falling for you. And now, I want to make new memories here, ones that last forever. She blinked away tears, overwhelmed by emotion. James, come, he said, offering his hand. She took it, and he led her to a beautifully set table for two, complete with candlelight and their favorite dishes from street vendors, the same ones they used to share in their early days, dancing in the moonlight. After dinner, James pulled her close and began swaying to the soft music playing in the background. No fancy ballroom, no extravagant wealth, he murmured. Just you, me, and the love we share. Amara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. This is perfect, she whispered. James pulled away slightly and gazed into her eyes. Marrying you was the best decision of my life, Amara. I would choose you in every lifetime, in every version of reality. Amara felt warmth spread through her chest. She knew in that moment that wealth, success, and status didn't matter. What mattered was the man who stood before her, the man who had given up everything just to be with her. And under the stars, with tears of happiness streaming down her face, she realized she had never been more in love. James and Amara had been through everything: love, heartbreak, sacrifice, and redemption. But as they stood hand in hand, looking out at the horizon from their cafe's terrace, they knew one thing for sure: their love had survived it all. The cafe had grown into a beloved spot in the neighborhood, not because of extravagant marketing or wealth, but because of the warmth they poured into it. Regular customers adored them, often commenting on how the love between James and Amara was evident in every smile they shared, in every touch of their hands, as they worked side by side. One evening, as the golden hues of the sunset bathed their little cafe in warm light, James pulled Amara into his arms. "This is our forever, isn't it?" he murmured, brushing a soft kiss against her forehead. She smiled, tracing her fingers along his jaw. "Yes, and it's more beautiful than I ever imagined. A new beginning." A few months later, life gifted them with a new chapter. Amara discovered she was pregnant. The moment she told James, he froze, his blue eyes widening in astonishment before filling with pure, uncontainable joy. "Are you serious?" he breathed, gently placing his hands over her stomach. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "We're going to be parents, James." Without hesitation, he lifted her off the ground, spinning her in excitement. "You've just made me the happiest man alive."
They spent the following months preparing for their baby, decorating the nursery in soft pastels, and dreaming about the future. James was more attentive than ever, ensuring Amara never had to lift a finger. "You're carrying our little miracle," he would remind her with every gentle touch and tender kiss. A love that stood the test of time. Years passed, and their love only deepened. Their cafe flourished, their home was filled with laughter, and their hearts remained forever entwined. James often reminded Amara, "I may have once been a billionaire, but I only found true wealth when I found you." And as they sat together one evening, watching their little daughter play in the yard, Amara leaned her head on James's shoulder. "We built this life with love, not money, and that's what makes it priceless." James kissed the top of her head, holding her closer. Happily ever after isn't about luxury. It's about moments like this. And in that quiet, beautiful moment, they knew this was the greatest love story they could have ever lived.